You have been on the campaign trail questioning Tim Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from the military before his unit deployed to Iraq. I want to read you something that Joe Eustace, who is a veteran, he served with Governor Walz, said. He said that's a lie. He said he was as good a soldier as you'll find. I'm not trying to defend him. I hope people don't think that. What I'm trying to do is defend someone who served his country. I'm not voting for him. I'll campaign against him, but I don't think it's fair to characterize his service the way they have. Governor Walz served 24 years. Sure. He even stayed after he could have retired because of 9/11, more than the country asked of him. Do you honor his service?
Well, of course, Dana, I honor his service, and I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision.
Ken Harbaugh with Against All Enemies on the MeidasTouch Network, and I've got Roger Misso with me today, former Naval Flight Officer, Academy graduate, and still in the reserves. And he has had some of, I think, the most insightful commentary about this BS attack on Governor Walz's service record. Roger, what is your gut reaction to that recent interview of JD Vance, where if you watch the whole thing, he claims he's not attacking Governor Walz's service record, but it's the kind of thing we hate to see in vet world, veteran service used for political gain. Your thoughts?
It's just something that we don't do, right? It's we can talk amongst ourselves in private, but publicly, it's shameful. And it preys on, something sinister in particular, which is the fact that we've been at war in the Middle East for the better part of the last 23 years. And the American public still doesn't really understand what that is. They don't understand the difference between active duty, reserve, National Guard, part-time service, and then retiring, right? And to take a guy like Governor Walz, who has served honorably for 24 years, and by the way, when you hit 20 years, you've earned the right to retire, right? That is a right. You've gone above and beyond what the nation expects of you. You've gone above and beyond your minimum service commitment. Earn the right to retire. There's so much that goes into that retirement process. It's not just, Tim Walz deciding one day I'm gone and he's gone. His chain of command's got to sign off on that. The Minnesota National Guard's got to sign off on that. And they did, knowing full well what the truth on the ground, the actual situation was. So now, 20 some years later, for JD Vance to come in and take umbrage with that and say, no, I'm sorry, your service wasn't good enough. One of the most deplorable attacks on a veteran that I've ever seen in the history of this country, and for it to be perpetrated by another veteran is, quite frankly, disgusting. Not the least of which is because, JD Vance is not at the top of the ticket. The person at the top of the ticket has committed what, I grew up, my dad was also in the National Guard, conservative family. And the original sin of citizenship in our family and our community was dodging the draft. And that is exactly what Donald Trump did. He had a wealthy daddy who paid for some other American to go to Vietnam in his place. A Vietnam that my grandfather served pre-Vietnam in Laos and Cambodia, but he went and volunteered to serve. Donald Trump had his dad get him out of service. The act of draft dodging is the original sin of citizenship, and Donald Trump committed it. So, I think when we think about JD Vance, we think about these baseless attacks on Governor Walz. In this election, you do have a choice, but if you choose to support draft dodging Donald Trump, you cannot talk about anybody's military service ever for any reason.
You were the director of the Taking the Hill PAC, a PAC dedicated to advocating for vets and military families. How is vet world? How are military families, broadly speaking, responding to this? I gotta believe that they see through the cynicism. I've actually heard people say, look, if JD Vance applied the same standard he's demanding of Walz to himself, he would have re-enlisted in the Marine Corps in the middle of a war instead of getting out. Like, it is completely cynical. How do the people you used to advocate for react to it?
Yeah, it's a lot of confusion, right? We're used to taking vets at their word. So when vets attack other vets, you destroy that sacred trust that we put in vets as the general public. So, I think particularly for veterans and military families, and especially veterans of the National Guard, it has been incredibly hurtful. Not just the National Guard, but part-time service members as a whole, right? I did 10 years on active duty. I am still a reservist today. So my views obviously don't reflect the U.S. government or Department of the Navy or any of that, right? This is just Roger talking. And my dad was National Guard for 30 years. It is not easy to serve part-time in the military. It's not easy to be a National Guard's service member or a reservist. It sounds like it's not a lot, right? It's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. That isn't, it's not your full-time job, but the reality is that you have another job. You have a family that relies on you during the week and during the rest of the month. And those weekends a month, those add up. And take on top of that, long-term orders during the year to maintain an active duty standard, and random year-long, often orders to go to the ends of the world to essentially be the relief pitcher for the active duty force. Reservists, National Guard service members feel that. Their families feel that. It doesn't matter where you deployed, for what frickin' reason. If you're the family member of a service member who's not home, it sucks. And for JD Vance to insinuate otherwise, it just doesn't get it, right? Governor Walz has coined that term that these guys are just weird, but also, that, like the lyric says, right, they're not like us, right? They don't get it. You did 4 years on active duty, and that's great. Thank you for your service, but do not denigrate the very real service and sacrifice of Guard families whose service experience is different than a public affairs enlisted service member in the Marine Corps, is different than a naval flight officer on active duty in the Navy, is different than a deployed National Guardsman in the Army working field artillery. Like, just respect service. It's not hard. Not doing that is weird, and it's wrong, and it's just not what we do.
And the contrast, I'm glad you said not what we do, because the contrast with vets like you and me, with Governor Walz himself, in how we talk about even JD Vance's service couldn't be more stark. I want to play this clip of Governor Walz at the AFSCME union giving a speech and thanking JD Vance for his service.
Yeah.
Then in 2005, I felt the call of duty again, this time of being service to my country in the halls of Congress. My students inspired me to run for that office, and I was proud to make it to Washington. I was a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee and a champion of our men and women in uniform. I'm going to say it again as clearly as I can. I am damn proud of my service to this country. And I firmly believe you should never denigrate another person's service record. To anyone brave enough to put on that uniform for our great country, including my opponent, I just have a few simple words. Thank you for your service and sacrifice.
So there you have it, Roger. That's the difference. On one side, we have a party that uplifts service, honors people who've done it, and then takes issue with their politics outside of the context of their military service. On the other side, you have, and this goes all the way back to Swift voting, right? They started with John Kerry. 3 Purple Hearts wasn't enough. John McCain shouldn't have gotten shot down. I mean, again and again and again, you have this strategy of turning people's service into a liability, and it's just abhorrent. Thanks for watching, everyone. I have been so humbled by the support of this audience and the speed at which this show has grown. You are why I and the whole team here do this. If you're interested in bonus content, check out my Patreon page. It's free to sign up, and there's an option to donate as well. The link is right there and in the show notes. Thanks again. This episode of Burn the Boats is brought to you by Manukora honey. This miracle of nature just fell into my lap at the perfect time. It's a rare super honey that is 100% natural and has some unique properties. Manukora makes Manuka honey, a single origin honey that comes from New Zealand, where the bees only feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree, making honey that is pure, rich, complex, with a creamier texture that is on a completely different level from the normal honey you find at the supermarket. You can use it as you would any other honey, but what puts the super in Manuka honey is it's rich in oxidants and prebiotics, 3 times more compared to regular honey. On top of that, it contains an antibacterial compound called MGO that can be found exclusively in Manuka honey. The bottom line is that these nutrients support your optimal immune and digestive health, and it's delicious. Manukora sent me a jar and squeeze bottle of their MGO 850 Plus Manuka honey, their best-selling honey. The 850 Plus honey has a creamy caramel texture that is unlike anything I've ever tried. Just grab a spoonful out of the jar and I put it in my favorite beverage, or I squeeze some out on toast or oatmeal. It's delicious. Manukora is savory, delicious, and truly the best honey I've had. If you head to manukora.com/boats, you can get $25 off their starter kit, which comes with the MGO 850 Plus Manuka honey, a free travel pack of honey sticks, a free wooden spoon, and also a free guidebook. It's the perfect gift for a loved one, no matter the season. I love the jar and squeeze bottle, but the extra pack of compostable honey sticks is perfect for whenever you're on the go. You can bring them with you when you're traveling or need a quick snack running errands, and they are the perfect energy boost if you're out for a run or at the gym, especially this time of year. That's manukora.com/boats to get $25 off your starter kit. This is just the ultimate honey. Indulge and try some honey with superpowers from Manukora. Dana Bash gets at this. She's not a vet, but I think she is picking up on this sentiment in the veteran community when she says, I'm going to play the clip, that it just seems untoward.
You know, I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you serve with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is.
So, Roger, I think this is what it's going to come down to, and would love your thoughts as a former PAC guy, a political thinker and strategist. I think it's going to backfire because enough Americans know someone in the military who did 20 years, 24 years, and got out. They know someone who left during the longest wars in America's history. It would have been tough to stay in that whole time, right? I mean, I got out in the middle of wartime, and they're gonna call BS on this attack, as they should. I hope that happens. Yeah. What's your take?
Yeah. You know, I think about people like my grandfather who served, my dad, my brother who served, and, you know, my own service experience, and they're all different, right? But I think one of the common things that vets understand is whenever you get out, you always feel like you could have done more, right? And that's why I feel like a lot of us are cautious about talking about our service at all and claiming benefits that we've earned and all that. What JD Vance has done, I think people can see through, and it will have a toxic, chilling effect on the veterans community. It'll make people less likely to talk about their service because you're going to have the JD Vance police come around the corner and say, you didn't actually do that, and lie about your service record, until the Minnesota National Guard has to come out and say, actually, yeah, what Governor Walz is saying is true, right? That's the truth. That's what happened, what he said, right? Like, so many of us feel like we should do more, we can do more, that this kind of attack is so sinister. And I think is why you see a lot of veterans and military family members speaking out, because it's not just, correcting an error. There is no error, right? There is the truth that was Governor Walz's service. He earned the right to retire. He served 24 years. Not everybody serves past 20 years. And for those who do, we say thank you for your service. But like Governor Walz said, for those who want to stay in for just 4 years, thank you for your service. We need people to serve. I just cannot believe that a party that's running the most famous draft dodger in American history is telling a military veteran that their service wasn't good enough. That's just at the end of the day, that's it for me, Ken. I can't break it down any farther for people. Either you care about that, either you have honor, or you don't, and you have something else, but it isn't something that we recognize or value or, need, I think, to lead this country.
The thing that drives me the craziest about Vance launching this attack and attacks like it, I mean, it's kind of his only play, is just how hypocritical he is. When he says, I'll replay the clip here, when he says, all I care about is the truth.
I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is.
So he says, all I care about is the truth. And this is coming from a guy who lies habitually. And I didn't have to look hard. I just pulled up his last speech. It was in Atlanta, where he drops lie after lie after lie. Here are just two of them.
Let's talk about some things that are weird. We think it's weird that Democrats want to put sexually explicit books in toddlers' libraries. We think it's weird that the far left wants to allow biological males to beat the living crap out of women in boxing.
So, Roger, it's the hypocrisy, the dishonor of this entire attack that I think is going to blow up in his face, and not just military families and vets, but Americans, broadly speaking, are going to reject it. Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, I hope so too.
Really glad you brought up that point about vets feeling as they're leaving the military like they haven't given enough. It's hard to describe that to people who haven't been through that. And I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to share as our close something I wrote in either 2005 or 2006 about the difficulty I had making that transition. Thanks so much, Roger. We'll send you out with this clip from NPR. Good having you.
Thanks, Ken.
Commentator Ken Harbaugh served as a Navy pilot before attending Yale Law School. During his 9 years of active duty service, he flew intelligence and combat reconnaissance missions in the Western Pacific and Middle East. Now he says he feels guilty about not fighting in the Iraq War.
Across the street from Yale University, there's a cemetery. Sometimes I wander over and sit next to the grave of a sergeant killed in Iraq. I did not know him, but this is as close as I can get to those of my comrades who died fighting. I left the military in the middle of a war to attend Yale Law School. I made a promise to my wife that once our first child was born, I would make the transition. We were both tired of deployments, and I did not want to miss seeing my daughter grow up. But there are thousands of other mothers and dads, soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan, who carry that burden every day so that I don't have to. Many of them will never come home. On my last day in uniform, my commanding officer called me into his office. Without a hint of insincerity, he gave me his blessing. It was, looking back, an almost priestly act. There were no recriminations for abandoning the military in wartime, no accusations of not giving enough. He thanked me for serving honorably and wished me well in civilian life. What an amazing thing. The hardships of this war are not borne fairly. As a country, we are asking far too much of far too few. But the men and women doing the fighting carry on without nearly the bitterness they are entitled to. As grateful as I am to be at Yale, I still feel guilty. Every minute I get to spend with my daughter is paid for by the sacrifices of soldiers better than me. As a veteran, people occasionally thank me for my service. Some even say, like my commanding officer did, that I have given enough. I don't know how to respond to that. What is enough? My part in this war, at least on the front lines, is over. I don't want to orphan my daughter. But neither do the thousands of other moms and dads who are fighting in my place. Sometimes it is all I can do to cross the street, sit with a fallen comrade, and ask his forgiveness.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.